Hey everybody, I'm Major James Ward, OC November Company. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Padre Ball 2025. It is happening this year on the 22nd of February, and it will be at Garrison Petawawa, Y101 Victoria Barracks, home of the 1st Battalion, the Royal Canadian Regiment. It's a formal ball, but don't be afraid. It's not that kind of stuffy affair. It's very relaxed, and we're gonna have a really good time hanging out with each other and commemorating this big battle. Why we do this is not just to go back in time a little bit and think about our regimental family in the past, but also to celebrate it with our current family. And that includes your spouses, and that includes all ranks, your superiors and your subordinates, coming together and having a good meal and having a good time. I went to this thing for the first time when I was 23 years old, and I had a blast. And my spouse, who was a girlfriend at the time, wasn't very keen to come, and she had a great time. She really enjoyed it. So I'm really excited to see you guys. I hope everyone signs up or RSVPs and gets out to the ball. I'll see you guys there.
This podcast is owned and operated by the RCR Association, a private third party to the Department of National Defense. The content of this podcast is the responsibility of the RCR Association and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the Government of Canada. The official emblems of the regiment are used with the permission of Regimental Headquarters, the RCR.
Can I ask you, do you believe in like there are good people and there are bad people?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because
Okay.
it's by virtue of choice.
Okay.
Is that people can use their gifts to be a gift for others, or use their gifts not to be a gift for others. It's that choice. And so this is even when it comes to even addressing why have a chaplain in the military? Because even when I was in basic training, we went to the War Museum in Ottawa, and they had a big room of all the artillery used over the centuries in Canada. Think, what the heck am I doing? Am I, by virtue of being a chaplain, am I enabling this? And so, I mean, getting back to the need of a military is to defend oneself and defend the rights of others when necessary. So yeah, there are good people and bad people. Just by virtue of having a military indicates that. Is hopefully that we are as Canadians, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, are using the ability to inflict mortal wounds in a way that's justified,
Mm-hmm.
and that has its own ethical. What does it mean we could use lethal force, in a justified manner?
Yeah.
So that's a whole philosophical component. So I mean, there has to be that component. I mean, this is where chaplains kind of work in that realm of kind of ethics and morality. Like, how do we take this powerful force, do good with it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not always been the case in the CAF, and then to kind of review, okay, how could we lessons learned? How could we have done things better?
Yeah.
My point is, there are good people and there are bad people, and there are people who are good, who've been bad, and bad people who've been good.
I agree. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Manny Singh from the RCR Association podcast. Joining me today is my guest, a very wonderful, intelligent, good human being that I've been fortunate enough to have met and spent quite a bit of time to get to know since I've been at the RCR.
Mm-hmm.
Our guest today is Captain John Nemanic, the battalion chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you for the accolade. I didn't expect that, but thank you.
You're welcome. Sir, what can you tell us about what a chaplain is?
I was thinking about that today, and it's almost like in a company, there's research and development. Now, in terms of a company, it doesn't need research and development. It just produces its service or product. But research and development kind of gives that capacity, kind of look at trends and kind of anticipate the future. And so, like, it's not necessary, but it is critical. And I would say, in terms of what a chaplain does is really to kind of respond to the needs of members and the whole unit. They kind of see what trends, what's going on, to provide immediate care, and also kind of anticipate what's going on to respond to things proactively. I mean, it's really care for all.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And how is this organization kind of like governed? Like, how does the chaplain occupation, how is it structured in the military?
Sure. So it's like as a specialized entity, it's a branch within the Canadian Armed Forces. So we have the Royal Canadian Chaplain Service who vets potential candidates. So we had our own screening session, and then we go over to the CAF. So once we have kind of the mandate from the chaplain service, and then it goes through the CAF's recruitment process.
Okay, right on. And there's typically like one person in your position per battalion
I
or
think,
per unit?
You know, the ratio is like one chaplain to say 500 to 600 members. So previous to my engagement here at 3RCR, I served as the chaplain to the fire hall, CMed. So it's the kind of the medical supply depot, one Canadian Field Hospital. So, I mean, all that equates to about 300 or 400. But so, you know, for me, it's nice where everything is under one roof versus being under essentially three roofs in my previous occupation.
So since how long have you been in the military?
2.5 years.
2.5 years in the
Yes,
military.
Correct.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So what were you doing before?
You know, I served as a Roman Catholic priest in southern Alberta. So technically, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Calgary. Diocese is a geographical area. So essentially, the southern part of the province. I served there for 14 years.
That's interesting. So can you tell me, how does one get involved in that kind of profession?
Okay. You know, it's, I mean, first comes from, I like to think of it as a call from God. Like in terms of, as a Roman Catholic priest, I mean, part of it is this call to celibacy. Now, this is, I mean, go kind of straight with it. I mean, there's Roman Catholicism, but Ukrainian Catholicism, Maronite Catholicism. So where, you know, the Eastern Rite, we'll call it, their priests can marry. Roman Catholics. So, I mean, that's a dimension of it. So, I mean, to partake of that kind of calling has to have a divine origin. So, you know, since I was about 9 years old, I thought about becoming a Catholic priest.
Wow.
And then my mom said, but John, I want to be a grandmother. My sister said, but John, I want to be an aunt. And it's like, you know, I mean, subsequently, if they were to see my ministry, I would say, Mom, here all your grandchildren are here. You know, thousands of people here who call me father, and so, Mom, therefore, you're a grandmother too, spiritual grandmother. So, but I mean, she died before I became a priest, so she wasn't able to see that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so getting back to the process of becoming a Roman Catholic priest. So I mean, it's a call, a vocation. And I mean, that part of a discernment, like what the heck does that mean, vocation? How can one be called by God? Like it's like a radio or on a phone having data. Like how does one enter into that? And then subsequent in terms of the academic side. So then I needed a university degree, and then I needed 2 years of philosophy, followed by essentially 5 years of theology, including an internship year, and then so it was a long time of study.
Wow.
So yeah, it was 8 years of study.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So when you were studying, and you were studying with the intention of having a professional career lifestyle in this
Correct.
kind of way.
Yeah.
So was this going to be funded by yourself, or was the church involved in making your education happen?
You know, I was lucky that the church provided that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, it was like $250,000 invested in me by
That's
the end
incredible.
of it. Oh yeah. So I mean, it really, because people had invested in me. I mean, with the sense of, okay, now by virtue of my ministry, I can give back.
Yeah.
In ways that to kind of to express my gratitude, and therefore there would be fundraising appeals over the course of the years I served to say, hey, we have to kind of put some money back into the kitty because I'm the beneficiary of some of these monies. So,
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting way to go about supporting your membership and developing your capacity to invest in your people to ultimately reinvest back into the community.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you started your journey as being how do you prefer to it? Like in your beginning employment of the church, are you a priest as your first entry level position? Like how did it work when you started your professional career with the church.
Well, this is where the military connotations kind of line up. In terms of being a seminarian, we'd be like an officer cadet.
Right.
And then the next rank would have been deacon, which would be similar to a lieutenant. And then a priest would be similar to a captain. And then let's say a bishop, in terms of ecclesiastical rank or church rank, would be similar to, let's say, being a light colonel or a major.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So just so I understand it, like when we see a church, it's usually going to be administered or led by a deacon or a priest.
Typically, it would be a priest.
A priest.
Yeah. Or, I mean, this even the term pastor implies someone who's responsible for a geographical area, which is connotated by the church building, which oversees a particular area of Catholics in the area.
That's interesting. So like a district, basically.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
So in your position, were you a pastor? You were saying?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was
which community?
First I was an associate priest, so that would be kind of like I wouldn't say like a lieutenant. No, well, I mean, it was kind of like, just being a helping priest. And so the idea of a pastor is ultimately responsible for the temporal and spiritual and financial affairs of the community, which I didn't have. I was too young. Like, just get some on the job experience.
How old are you?
Was I 32?
When you were a pastor?
No. When I was an associate. So when I was ordained at 32 and spent 2 years in medicine, I loved it because, I could just have fun. Like, in terms of like just being with people, not having the administration. Because when someone's responsible for, like, what did Harry Truman say? That, the buck stops here. I don't have to be that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a pastor does. And then the pastor becomes responsible for everything. And so when I was named pastor, it was in Chestermere, which is a suburb of Calgary, which had been in a school gym for 7 years at that time with no church building. And it was one of these kind of mushrooming communities that was growing so quickly that the social infrastructure hadn't caught up yet. So it's kind of like, okay, we've been worshiping a school gym. When are we going to build a church? And here I was 34 years old, like sometimes just remembering, okay, which hand is my right hand, which is my left hand, let alone like fundraising millions of dollars, organizing people to prepare a plan, and then see to it that it's a place of, place of worship, a place of service. Like, that was a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And my naivety, yeah, okay, sure, I'll do it. Which I did, like because by, part of what a Catholic priest is mandated to do is to be obedient to the bishop in the same way that a military member has to obey lawful order. And so when the bishop says, John, I think you've got the skills and the will to serve this community. So I was there for 6 years. We didn't build a church. However, we did, it was like kind of bring the situation, situation awareness. And so, like, okay, we're not going to build a church. We're not there yet. But more importantly, how do we build this community together? So we ended up climbing mountains because, for those who've been to Calgary, let's say 100 kilometers away are the Rockies, but they're so intimidating unless one's going to ski and then, okay, take a gondola up or hike up. But most people, it's so intimidating unless they're going to take a drive up. And so what we did is we climbed mountains. And so every year we serve with 9, the following year 15, following year 24. We climbed these important 3,000 meter and higher mountains.
Yeah,
so,
still a big hill.
Oh,
Big
yeah,
mountain.
because you know what? And it galvanized people who normally wouldn't have associated with one another and say, I got to meet this person. I got to meet this person. And somebody made a point of really like losing significant weight, getting more fit so they can climb the mountains. And it was really galvanizing. And then they would in turn like share their stories with their friends because we would have fundraising dinners and the like. And it was really impressive to see how people kind of galvanize that having a church is important for us. We need a spiritual home. And they could share the story. And then by that time, I was so successful that I went to another church and served there. Probably, I would argue the largest church in Western Canada. Like, it was like 2,000 people every Sunday.
Wow.
And
when you say Western Canada, are we talking like Alberta?
Alberta, I would say BC, Saskatchewan, maybe Manitoba, at least, from a Catholic perspective. it was a big place.
Okay, interesting.
And so, to go from this experience, which was really taxing, and then to even up the ante in terms of responsibility. Because I mean, it's like I had to manage another 2 or 3 priests. I had to manage a staff of 15 people at some points. You know, volunteers. There are 50 volunteers who have their own needs. Like 50 volunteer organizations within the church. It was crazy. 4 schools.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a lot to walk away from.
oh my goodness
You know?
gracious! It was overwhelming. And I mean, and this is part of, you know, as a Roman Catholic priest. Okay, maybe, you know, I mean, when it comes to, you know, marriage and celibacy, you know, for me it was like being able to be devoted, therefore, to the church. I saw that the parish is my bride, and so therefore I have to, you know, tend to it. And the same, then it comes with prayer. It's like, how do I sustain myself? It was prayer that sustained me. It was like kind of like that.
When you say sustained you,
Oh, yeah.
are you talking about like this is what helped you keep your, I don't know, keep yourself together when
Absolutely,
you're
yeah,
going through a hardship and like a very big struggle?
Oh, sure. You know, I mean, in the same way, you know, speaking of vocation, you know, that God called me to this. And so it was very subtle. In the same way, maybe, you know, when someone ends up getting married and making a commitment to someone, you know, because people ask me that question, like, how did you know? And I point the question back to them. Like, how did you know you wanted to be a doctor? Like, for me, I could never be a doctor. I have no capacity for it. And people have that gift. And so for me, I had this gift. And
That's
so
very interesting that you say that.
And, you know, and it's also then, you know, kind of being nurtured in that prayer. I mean, people speak about, you know, being mindful, like just like, you know, the gift of silence or the gift of, you know, just being able to contemplate. I mean, it's like prayer is the antithesis of the modern world, because if people are bored, they get their phones out. They're always distracted versus like, well, I have to think about things. I have to appreciate, you know, I had a rough day, or I have a great day. And so prayer is that, you know, Lord, what are you calling me to?
What's your definition of prayer? Is there a definition for prayer? Is there an exact,
You know,
white or black?
I mean, different faiths come to a different. It is to tap into the divine. That there is an other. Saint Teresa of Avila speaks of prayer simply a dialogue with God. And now this enter, you know, who is God, or what is God, and what does that mean? Having a dialogue with that which is other, which is like, you know, even the Jewish name for God is like God is. And so how can we speak the one who is? There's no beginning, you know, the one who is, and yet has this dialogue with, who wants to have, in a certain sense, friend. Now, this is from a Roman Catholic perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my sense, is like being able to tap into someone who is love and wants me to enter that, and then to kind of be a source of love for others.
That's incredible.
Which is utter mystery.
Yeah. I found like the idea of like showing that love, that compassionate piece is important to like a community dynamic and a leadership dynamic, and having someone who can foster that in their group. It's really a big deal. And, you know, when you think about our place of work, being in the infantry, it has its hardships and struggles, and even the extra layer of the environment that we operate has its own struggles and hardships associated to just trying to get the job done, and what the job is when you define it in the infantry. Having someone that can be there to provide to ensure that this necessary pillar of community is preserved and it's continued to be exercised in its community, the love, the compassionate piece. I think like a chaplain, a padre, you know, insert fill in the blank, but someone who can fill in that position of being that battalion chaplain plays an integral role in sustaining the maintenance of morale of a unit formation in the military. And I kind of like feel like I was kind of drag that out a bit.
Okay.
But I did want to say, like, when you say love and compassion, there's been times where like, you know, an extensive period of time being deployed, that it's good to kind of feel that emotion that like you're cared for, you're looked after. And someone coming from your background, spending the amount of time that you have studying this field, studying, like, I guess what you would associate to be like philosophy of divinity studies. Is that how you pronounce it? Divinity?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, like, because you're getting into some depth of knowledge that we're not really familiar with. And I think people grow up with religion in their lives. I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to kind of just shrug it off now as like a kind of a taboo thing, because we kind of like lost touch with the benefit that comes from having faith in an organized fashion. I would think that's like a good way to put it. But Padre, I'm talking a lot right now, but I think you have an important role that the battalion has like a need for, and the Army has a need for, militaries in general.
Sure.
And it's kind of neat that each personality that fills your role, it brings something different to the table. What are some things that you've gotten to do while being in the military as a chaplain versus being outside of the military?
Well, number was be para.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Tell us about this.
My hands are still recovering from that. You know what is
basic parachutist course.
Correct. Yeah. 8 days I took it, like 8 training days. And I mean, like, who in the world, like, I'm now starting to get some of the military lingo, like civvy side. Like civvy side, people pay for the opportunity to jump out of airplanes. This is our job. And so I took it very seriously, being invited to take the course. And then I know of other chaplains who've gotten their wings. Okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And this is where, you know, I never appreciate like how hard all of you train to be like 3 RCR infanteers. Like I tip my hat, because like it's like my hands, like I said, my hands are starting to recover because of the chin ups, and then having to, you know, when we do the practice, the landings, have to grab the rope so the guy gets up there and have to swing him, so I have to grab into the harness. So, you know, being able to do that, I mean, to be with all of you was really a privilege, like just to get a sense of what you guys go through. And on the flip side, I think a lot of people say, what in the world is Padre doing? Like, he's 48 years old and running around a building. Like, for me, it was like being in kindergarten, where I got scolded by my kindergarten teacher for running into school. And here, this is our job. Like, we have to run because it's all part of the training. And so, you know, the importance of the training and just being immersed in that. I mean, I find like now, because you'd mentioned Sergeant Singh about kind of like a part of what a chaplain does is because most of us come as direct entry, so we have had some civilian experience, and so being able to get a sense of the signs of the times, get a sense of the culture. And I mean, you know, is that some of the other units, I mean, they had their own cultures and responding to that here. And even Padre Laguerre said, hey, if you're fit, Padre Nemanic, like, you'll get in with this unit. And so for me, like, Big Para was kind of that great expression of fitness, and then building the credibility. It's like, hey, the Padre's with us. Like, he's suffering with us.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. Like, when I've been a candidate on a course and I've seen a lieutenant colonel, an MWO on course with me, for example, that was my BPARA. Like, I had a lieutenant colonel from, somebody posted in Ottawa, actually in particular, Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Corey. Shout out. He was an OC back in 1RCR, Duke's company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to be a candidate with him on his BPARA experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the DSM of the Advanced Warfare School. He was an MWO, and I think he might have been 46, something like 48 as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some very senior members of the military, like, going on this course very late in their careers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was awesome, because there's just something kind of cool and neat about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they talk about endure hardship with your subordinates. And I think a lot of it has to do with inspiring them. And I think seeing those people did hit those parts of me, like, man, this is kind of inspirational to see somebody doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, like, hey, you should absolutely do this course. I did this course when I was 31 years old, about to hit 32.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never too late. When you see somebody who's a lieutenant colonel or a master warrant officer, they're 46, 48 years old, about to go and jab outside of an aircraft.
Yes.
Yeah. I do have a question, though, because you're talking about, hey, somebody having a conversation with you about being fit before you go to 3RCR.
Mm-hmm.
In the Padre Corps, or to the best of your abilities, how do you describe how 3RCR is perceived?
I mean, it's tough. Like, I mean, probably Padre Garrett kind of insinuated. I mean, it's like, if I could speak about you as high performers, high achievers, like, go get it. Even, even as a preparation for special forces, like, what is it? Three-sore is the the nickname. And so in terms of, being ambitious. And so this is where I come in, is like just building credibility. Is like, okay, the Padre is with us. He's doing the Iron Warrior. He's doing the 10K ruck marches with full FFO. And even on those occasions in which we're marching, then the conversations come up about why did you become a chaplain? Like, even on the Be Para course, like, what does a chaplain do? And even talking about as a Roman Catholic priest, because they would say, how's your family? I don't have one. And then speaking about the passage from Matthew 19 that some are celibates for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. And it's like, whoa, like what we read in the scriptures, I mean, maybe it actually comes into play. So I mean, having those conversations, because there's rapport. It's like, okay, Padre's with, like, he cares for us. He cares for what we care for.
Yeah.
And so therefore, okay, I gotta, if it's a highly ambitious, go-getting, okay, we're going to suffer through this, then, then I have to bring something to the table myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many people do you think you provide a service to while you're a chaplain at a unit like a light infantry battalion?
Yeah, I don't know. There's, like, out of the Christian scriptures, there's a parable of the sower of the seeds. And so the sower throws seed on rocky ground, in thorns and on good soil. And so for me, it's like part of my job is just walking the lines, and I don't know what kind of impact I've had on people,
right.
Or I think, I'm getting all these people coming to visit me, but more importantly is like just someone saying hi to someone, spending time, with someone who's, cleaning his gun, and say, wow, someone cared for me. So, I mean, in terms of the impact, I don't know, but I mean, like, this is where it's such my work is, I find it's such a blessing, is just being able to have the capacity just to walk around and waste time. Like, just being able to just make the conversations without, like, on civilians, like, every minute had to be, I was occupied with something, because there's so much work that had to be done. Here I have the capacity just to walk the lines and have these conversations. So in terms of my impact, I don't know.
Yeah, because like, I think people can assume that, like, oh no, the people that come through your door, sit down with you, spend that time period with you are considered, the people getting your services. But in reality, it's everybody you interact with.
Sure.
When you're in the building, when you're outside the building, or in your professional capacity, you could argue as somebody that you are providing a service to. And that's what's interesting about human interaction. Something small, like a very small interaction, can lead to such a big impact on someone. And for people to be in leadership positions, especially key positions on top of being in a leadership position, you can have a huge impact in the development of somebody.
Yeah.
We're approaching the winter season. So you talk about like those winter blues that happen. So it's, you could argue it's like that depressing part of the year, right? You don't get as much sunlight. We're going to be going into a big holiday winter break period. And at this point, we're not really engaged with the high tempo training or at this time deployments too. And so for somebody like you to go in and check on the community of the membership, especially the young people that are here, it plays a huge role. Like, we kind of sometimes can pay it lip service when we're like, yeah, I'll do a buddy check. But there is a lot of benefit in doing a buddy check for all of us that are out there that aren't in those leadership capacities or serving as like a chaplain in a battalion. And I find that that's important about people in your kind of role, is that community engagement piece that happens internally at the battalion or within each company. When you walk the lines, you're having an opportunity to have that impact with the soldier in the lines, or an officer or whatever. Well, I
remember my first week here was Pacino Day, and I was serving spaghetti, and Warrant Officer Heinrich, so he oversees the para course. He saw me serving. He says, Padre, Tuesday, 0600, we're going to do the pre-PT test for Be Para. And so it's just by virtue of just doing something that is so simple, like just serving spaghetti becomes an avenue to be para. So, this is where, the importance is walking the lines and and especially, I'm glad now I've been at the unit for 6 months, having rapport and even checking up on guys, like if they've been on a compassion or they've met with me, and then I'll kind of just say, hey, how are things going with you? Like, hey, did you follow up with this? And so it just builds even deeper rapport because because I say that if I were the recipient of that dialogue, how would I feel about that?
Yeah.
And so if, someone remembers my name, someone remembers my situation, someone who cares, like just took that initiative, take a couple minutes. Hey, how's it going? How's this? Like what's the follow-up? So, yeah, those little things. So,
do you find a difference in the people that you're interacting with at our unit versus the last place you worked at?
Yeah, it was a little bit different. When I was at field hospital, a lot of people had, they were direct entry members as well, like whether they're doctors or nurses at field hospital. And so, they had different needs versus here. It's a very young unit. And so therefore, there are different needs. And so therefore they kind of read the situation and respond. Like, but the number one, whether it's to, to whatever unit, it's just like kind of just walking the lines, building rapport, and just kind of gauging where people are at, and just caring for them or even loving them. And love is like my definition of love would be to seek the good of another without anything in return. Like I have the capacity to do that. So this is where just to kind of love them, like see where people are at and help them out.
Okay, right on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular goals or a particular goal that you would like to accomplish while you're posted at 3RCR?
I'd love to go on an IRU or a tasking or a deployment. And I know with Global Readiness Task Force, with the IRU, those are on the horizon. And at the same time to say, just what is important today. Because that it's even the danger, I think, within even among chaplains is using someone to get ahead. Is like, I want to get to this unit, or I want to be able to study this, but I need to go through this in order to get there. And so using people or situations to get to a particular goal. For me, ultimately, it would be just to serve the members of 3RCR wherever. And if it's here, if it's there, so be it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it is to kind of respond to the needs and have that humility to do so.
I deployed 4 times now, three overseas missions, and when I've deployed, I've always noticed that there is a need for someone or people to want to seek the services of like a chap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in like Kuwait on Op Impact over there, it was a pretty, relatively speaking, a large installation of a logistics hub. And, I was with a lot of different types of trades and occupations over there, a lot of the rear echelon type of trades and stuff like that. It was a very interesting opportunity. And every once a week, we'd all get together, and those that wanted to have like a Padres hour, chaplain's hour once a week. And through that, I got to do the Sentinel program. He spoke to me. His name was, I think he was Navy, so I want to say he's like a lieutenant commander now, lieutenant commander, Matthew Squires.
Yes.
Amazing person.
He's a good guy.
He left such a substantial, significant, positive experience about battalion chaplains and how much of a great service they can provide to people. And I would love just taking opportunities to talk to him while I was deployed. But definitely felt like I was part of a community when I would hang out with him and those people that would come by. And to be honest, I'm not from the religious denomination he represents or anything like that. I'm pretty South Asian, you know what I mean? And so being involved in the community aspect of what he had to offer, I had no issues, no conflicts, never felt weird about it. It was just good people just talking about I don't know what normal, nice people like to talk about. It was just good community stuff, and talking about their problems, and we can hear it and learn from each other. And it just provided an opportunity for us to get together. He also provided an opportunity for us to do the Sentinel training. So we got that qualification out there as well. And that's an amazing opportunity for us to become more engaged with peer support. And that's something cool that comes out of the chaplain services,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Have you been able to facilitate Sentinel training?
I have, yeah. In October, we had, I think it was like 22 members of 3RCR take, and there were captains, no hook privates on the court. It was good to see that it's a volunteer initiative, so people desire to go and take the course to support their own to support their own colleagues, which is beautiful. Because I know at 3RCR, people may not seek the help of anyone, whether it be a chaplain, whether it be a social worker, whether it be, and so for the Sentinels, like their own client colleagues, to kind of say, something's awry. I mean, when to know someone's behavior's changing for the better, and hopefully, a Sentinel will kind of pick, hey, what's going on? Like you seem so much happier. And also on the other side is when someone's struggling, like whether it's to notice, someone's not, behaviors change for the negative, or, coming into work late or being angry, and then kind of pick up on that and ask the questions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then to realize, okay, here's what I can operate in terms of break, and then, to encourage that person or journey with that person to seek support from the unit chaplain or CDU or whatnot. And so absolutely to be that first responder.
With that being said, how does one become a Sentinel at 3RCR?
Just ask me, or if someone's listening and is not part of 3RC, to contact the unit chaplain, because this is what we do. And so, typically we have a course, let's say once every quarter or every 6 months to offer it. Yeah. And then, it's also then to do the PD sessions and the refreshers of the current Sentinel, so they kind of keep their skills up.
Do you post this information anywhere in particular for when the course is offered or when the refreshers are offered?
I'm in the process now to kind of look at 2025. Like now that I have a sense of what the schedule, like the tempo will be in the winter, to kind of then situate them, whether it's a lunch and learn, to keep it very casual, keep it, where it's not another burdensome activity of a Sentinel to do. Is that, just come, hey, let me know what's going on. Like, how can I help you? And then, we'll do a tract on resiliency, forgiveness, or, mental health first aid or something, like, or even, just bringing in someone from CISIP, the financial planning arm of CANEX, or, PSP, talk about stress management, just bringing like Sesame Street, like who are the people in your neighborhood? Like just bring those individuals in, and that, the Sentinels can then vouch to other members. Hey, CISIP is good. Hey, PSP is good, because I've encountered some of the people who work there. Yeah. And so that's a big support that Sentinels can bring, is, these people are good because I met them, because this is what the Padre has done through the Sentinel program.
Is there anything that you like, do you have a goal in terms of like how many of these courses you want to run or put together?
We don't have too many, because to kind of gauge. I have the offerings that people come, they come.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, it's also, more importantly is that Sentinels are actually engaging members and saying, hey, Padre, I engaged with this member. Would you follow up with that member? That's also a very, very important component of what Sentinels do. So.
Right on.
Yeah.
So Padre, we talked about what you did before you joined the military, talked about joining the military. While you're in the military, is there anything that you particularly want to accomplish?
I'd like to go to CANSOF if someone were to ask that.
Okay, right
because
on.
By virtue of my situation, I don't have a family. Like my parents are deceased. My siblings are doing well. So, for me, like I'm ready for 24 hours notice to move. Like okay. I'm ready to go. And I'm in reasonably good physical shape. In terms of actually aspiring to enter the military, one of them is, this is my gift. Like I'm strong, I'm healthy. This is what I want to give. Yeah. And that's what I like to do. But, I say, because I've heard stories of other chaplains saying, the chap Jen asked me to go and do this. I didn't want to do it, but that was such a great opportunity to serve. Like I really love that posting. So I don't know. I mean, this is where I have the aspiration, and then things change. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what's the the adage, like, just be ready. And so, I mean, for me, it's like just being ready to accept the call to serve. Like,
That's pretty neat. So
yeah.
like basically you want to deploy, you want to feel like you're involved with something that's happening where you're needed.
Yeah. Because I mean, like with civilian ministry, like after 14 years, I mean, was going to be doing the same thing year in and year out. And so in terms of like my aspirations to enter the military, it was in 2017. So the church, one of the churches I was at, a major he was a reserve major, and he had been to the Christmas service. He says, Father John, you'd make a great military chaplain. And that kind of planted the seed. And it was 2017, the centenary of the conclusion of World War I, the great images of how Canada served in World War I, World War II, Afghanistan. I said, man, wow. It really kind of awoke in me in terms of my ministry, because it was kind of like, whether it was called burnout or just boredom, but it was kind of like, this is where, okay, and also, like, I'm getting older, so if I don't do this now, like that ship will have sailed. And so, yeah, I mean, I love to be deployed, because like, even we were talking earlier about, when the people are here in the unit, like everyone's here from 10 o'clock until 4 o'clock, or, okay, maybe doing PT beforehand. And the people go to their homes. When they're deployed, they're away from everything. And then crises arise, or it's like, wow, for the first time in my life, I'm away from everything. And I've never thought about my place in society, my place in the world, what is my purpose? What's my meaning? Or when things go bad and they can't go because the individual's one of one, and how to help that person. And so this is where I think a chaplain can really be of support, is when the social supports that a person has had are really, taken away. It's like, well, I have to think of my place in society, or I have to do this, which is so demanding or even against my conscience. Like, how can I do this? And so I'm really grateful that the CAF still employs chaplains, because there's kind of a buffer to support members, which, to a certain degree, unless you can provide a reason for your being here now, like there's no employment. But who knows what could happen? And so just being that buffer to be able to support when the crisis arises, or be proactive and kind of prevent crises, because we can kind of pick things up, which is what the Sentinel program is so good at, is kind of like picking up on changes, in negative changes in a person before they become like critical. So, I mean, I think, I love to be deployed. Like, again, like I'm free to go and just to be with members. And even like, I mean, another inspiration was Band of Brothers. And I remember there was one of the episodes had the chaplain, at the Battle of the Bulge. Hey, Padre, someone's dying, or, someone needs morphine. And so like to be a caregiver to the people on their last, the last moments of their life, or to support those who are like so beleaguered by the hopelessness, and the Padre can be there to support. So.
When I hear you talk, it's like you're somebody who seems very passionate about trying to help people and be there for people in their like really time of need. And that's very commendable of you to be, of like who you are, and for us as an organization to be lucky to have people like you. So I appreciate you like sharing your perspective and your thoughts towards, some of these things, and sharing why you joined the military to be part of this very unique organization that has characters, so many characters and people with their own stories and backgrounds and stuff, and it's really neat. With that being said, I do have a question with regards to, being somebody who's a chaplain. Do you have people in your field of work, or people that you've met in your life that you look up to, and they're a reason why you joined the military? Are there people that you would I don't know, consider role models or mentors?
Oh, absolutely.
Is there anybody you'd be willing to talk about?
I mean, there have been so many. Like, I think of some very, very good friends of mine who are great fathers, who are great, like providers for their families, both financially and emotionally, morally, spiritually.
Right.
And I mean, just to see in their example, maybe I'm not going to model their lives on that, but it's like, wow, these guys are so selfless, and they're joyful at that. Like, it's like in so much of our world, at least the the perception is what's in it for me versus what's in it from me. And so even like, I mean, from a religious standpoint, John Paul II was a great inspiration because like me, like he lost his entire family by the time he was 22 years old. And in the grips of, he suffered through World War II, communism, and he could have easily switched and become this very man of great hatred because he had such natural gifts. And for him to say, no, I even though I've suffered so much, I look to, my God as an inspiration to serve. So, I mean, in terms of give, good family men, popes have been great inspirations. I mean, there's so many, people I learned from. Even here, like how selfless people are, I've encountered. Or even the instructions in Be Para, like they went above and beyond. Like even when I was taking the course, like some of them just wanted to bawl me out. And then some of them like ready to bawl me out. And then one of them said, hey, Padre, how come you can't get your clips into your canopy straps? I said, I can't reach. Okay, switch over. And it was like a moment of compassion. Because I got to get bawled out for that. He says, what's wrong? Okay. And then adjust. And it's like, so I mean, those little things, like what little things that people do. So I don't know if that answers your question. Like, so it's characteristics in any number of people. Say, wow, that person can do that. Maybe I can do something similar.
You're probably the first person that's ever like gave me a Pope reference. You know what I mean?
Right.
To be a
Yeah,
mentor.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, actually.
Mhm.
Are you a big person? Are you a big fan of history?
Oh, immensely so. Yeah. Because
Yeah?
if we don't learn from history, we're bound to repeat the same mistakes.
So can you tell me, like, is there a certain era that you're really fascinated about?
Every era has its own things to teach, because like even in terms of the saints, which are from a Catholic perspective, they're the superheroes of the faith. I mean, the Marvel universe, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Doctor Doom, like, however people want to be super villains or superheroes. And I mean, it's a temptation among some people to model their lives to do exactly what they did. But I mean, that they had the capacity, like this call to love in a situation that they found themselves in. Whether it was in like John Paul II, like how to combat communism with love. Like he could have easily switched on and become an instrument of like Hitler, like using the capacity to destroy versus, okay, is there another way that we can like nonviolence, Martin Luther King. Or like a Mother Teresa, like for her, like she led a very comfortable life as a Loreto sister with other kind of upper middle class people. And then she felt the call to serve the poorest of the poor. Mm-hmm. And so every age has people who respond to the needs of the time. So history, I think, teaches us about, okay, here's a situation, how do people respond? And some of them, tried generously and it failed, or some people, they wanted things to go one way and it went another way. And so, so I mean, it's a humility just to kind of listen and what happened and how do we learn?
It's really interesting you say that. Do you believe that people are meant to have like a purpose, like almost like a destiny? They're destined to do certain things.
Sure.
Is that very much in line with the idea of believing you have a vocation? Like this was meant for you to do? It's getting real deep. Right now.
I mean, it is. I mean, some people will say we're predestined. Like, if God knows exactly, so are we robots? Like, or do people have a part to play in terms of how they respond to situations, like free will? And so people have the opportunity to freely do good or freely do things that are not so good, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Can I ask you, do you believe in like there are good people and there are bad people?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, because it's by virtue of choice.
Okay.
Is that people can use their gifts to be a gift for others, or use their gifts not to be a gift for others. It's that choice. And so this is even when it comes to even addressing why have a chaplain in the military? Because even when I was in basic training, we went to the War Museum in Ottawa, and they had a big room of all the artillery used over the centuries in Canada. Think, what the heck am I doing? Am I, by virtue of being a chaplain, am I enabling this? And so, I mean, getting back to the need of a military is to defend oneself and defend the rights of others when necessary. So yeah, there are good people and bad people. And just by virtue of having a military indicates that. Is hopefully that we are as Canadians, members of the Canadian Armed Forces, are using the ability to inflict mortal wounds in a way that's justified.
Mm-hmm.
And that has its own ethical. What does it mean we could use lethal force, in a justified manner?
Yeah.
So that's a whole philosophical component. So I mean, there has to be that component. I mean, this is where chaplains kind of work in that realm of kind of ethics and morality. Like, how do we take this powerful force, do good with it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not always been the case in the CAF, and then to kind of review, okay, how could we lessons learned? How could we have done things better?
Yeah.
My point is, there are good people and there are bad people. And there are people who are good, who've been bad, and bad people who've been good.
I agree.
So I mean, and from my perspective, I mean, there's always hope that of change, of improvement.
Yeah, I don't know like what people have described it in the past as, like the hero's journey, but everyone has a journey, and I know for myself, I've gone through a lot of experiences where I've grown up and developed myself, and I've gone from what I would perceive myself as being somebody who was not a strong person where I came from, and not independent, not as resilient or reliable or as compassionate. But now I'm a much better version of that. Still got lots of work to do.
Yeah.
And I think everybody can kind of relate to some degree that life has like a journey kind of concept
Sure.
associated to it.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to like think about, I think, is the idea of good and bad or good and evil. Because identity is like a big component of like our decision making. Like, who are we? Who do we want to become? And that kind of goes into play with when you make your decisions, right? Are you this kind of person? Are you a good person? Because a good person wouldn't want to do that, right? Because I'm a good person. So I shouldn't engage in that activity. I should try to, find a solution or walk away from it or whatever, because sometimes for young people, they get into these kind of situations where maybe it's the life experience component of it, of making decisions, but not knowing yourself or spending enough time getting to know yourself and who you want to become has impacted people making some poor decisions, including myself, even when I think that, hey, you know what, maybe I'm not that dumb, maybe I'm not that dumb.
Yep.
I'm all right, and then I'll fuck it up.
Yep.
Sorry to use language, but I've made these mistakes and sometimes I get too confident in myself, but I think breaking down the identity piece is very important for all of us to think about is who are you and who do you want to become? Padre, you said you wanted to become like a priest, a man of God, if you will, since you were 9 years old. Tell us about this. Tell us about like your childhood. Like you grew up in a very religious dynamic? No, not at all.
Not really, no. I mean, it was like both my parents came from the former Yugoslav Republic of Slovenia. And I mean, there it's Roman Catholic. And in fact, the village my parents came from, a village of 200 people, the nickname for the town, it's Božakovo. They called it the Little Vatican because in the span of 100 years, the town has produced 6 priests.
Whoa. Is that a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's some like Calgary. I don't know if the city of Calgary has produced that many in that same amount. And Calgary's almost well over 1 million people. So I don't know if it was in the water, but I mean, yeah, my parents influenced me. But yeah, I mean, my dad died when I was 9 years old, and so that was a point at which, and it was like
he passed away when you were 9 years old.
Yeah. He'd fallen down the set of stairs. He was an alcoholic, so he came home after a night of drinking and went to untie his boots and fell down the stairs. And so it was like, I mean, the shock of, daddy's there one day, daddy's like in the hospital, like on life support, and next day daddy's dead. And so it's like, woof.
Man, that's a significant impact on somebody.
The swiftness that life can change.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, even my life is like now I've appreciated like how life can change on a dime. And so therefore to be proactive, like make sure that, I mean, I say that because in when I was 9 years old, the parish priest there would ask me, Johnny, how are you doing? And how's your mom doing? He didn't have to ask that, but that he would take the concern of a little boy and how things were at home. And I thought that sense of compassion. And also where the priests would dress for the mass or for this service was this phrase there that said, "Priests of God, celebrate this mass as if it were your first mass, your last mass, and only mass," in terms of the significance of the moment. And I've shared that in terms of my own preaching over time. Like, what if today was your first day? What if today was your last day? What if today was your only day? How would you live? And I think COVID is probably a reminder of how swift life can change, like the lockdowns, the illnesses. And said, whoa, like what if I die? Like I should get my life together. I think it's like memento mori. To contemplate in moments in a day one's mortality. Anyway, so getting back to becoming a priest. So I mean, it was an invitation. It was just something that kind of opened up. Like, I don't know how to describe. Like maybe someone who's a young guy said, I want to be a soldier. That's exactly what I want to be a doctor. Like for me, it's beyond the realm of thought that someone would want to do, like become a doctor or a dentist. But it's a gift. Whether it's from internal or if that's from a gift, a calling from God. And so, and then I thought, well, priests can't watch baseball, priests can't listen to music, priests can't, live a life. And so I thought, I'm not going to do it. I want to do what's most people do, is get married and have children. And it was that constant call, but it was a call of invitation. And I mean, I dated. I went to university. I like I said, I dated again, and thought, well, maybe I'll because I went to University of Windsor and studied for my Bachelor of Commerce, and I thought, okay, I'll maybe get an international job, meet a nice girl. Yeah. And then and then things changed. So what happened was that I got a job managing a student youth conference in Calgary. So it was going to be a conference in 2002, attended by 600 delegates from 85 countries for a week in Calgary. I thought, wow, this is like the Olympics.
And you were dating at this time?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go, Padre!
Yeah. And then after 6 months on the job, well, okay. Then I met with a vocation. It was still coming to me. So in the Diocese of Calgary, there's a recruiter. Mm-hmm. And so I spoke with him. He says, John should live at our house of those discerning for the priesthood. And I said, Father, I can't because of my work. Like, I have to go and fundraise, I'd say, $2 million for this conference. This is John. The Lord has a different schedule for each of us. This was on a Saturday morning. We had breakfast. 2 days later, the chairman for the board of directors for this conference fired me. She says, John, you're not a good enough fundraiser manager for this project. But because I had this conversation with this priest 2 days ago and then I got fired, it's like, okay, maybe this is now the opportunity to kind of consider this. So this is 2001. And then and it was interesting because I'd actually studied in Oregon for 2 years. And so that was at the point of September 11th, which the church was responsive to people's needs in terms of, the first officially declared person from 9/11 was Father Michael, I forget his surname, but Catholic priest, the chaplain for one of the fire halls, died because, I think whether debris or person fell on him and he died.
No way. Yeah. One of the first reported casualties of first responders was the chaplain of the New York City Fire Department.
Correct.
What?
So and then the same priest would say one of the services that priest provides, the sacrament of confession, where people confess their sins. He said, whoa, like this confessions I've got, because it's like, man, to be in a plane and that plane could fortunately enter into a building. So people have to think about their mortality. So we had that. And then early 2002 out of Boston, this clergy sex abuse scandal came out. So, I mean, to go from the highs of the Catholic priesthood to the lows, and it just got lower and lower and lower. Oh my goodness. And so for me to think, do I want to be part of this? And for me, it was that constant call, like, John, just go there, but be a good priest. Like, love the people, pray, and don't be a good shepherd. Like, don't abuse them.
Because there's a lot of influence, power.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Oh, yeah.
A lot of people trust you guys, right? So
immensely,
and that goes with people in all these kind of interesting positions of authority and influence. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess like it's something that I don't know if you're just like completely bulletproof from making this poor bad decisions anymore,
Mhm.
or if you still have that where you have to evaluate what you're gonna do. Like I know personally speaking, I get to a point maybe in the year where my decision making is pretty on par or pretty good,
Mhm.
and it's not much contemplation I have between making decisions.
Sure.
But sometimes I let myself go and I'm too chill and like I haven't done anything where I had to make any big decisions or critical thinking.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, should I do that? I don't know. Like, oh man, that's probably gonna make me a bad person.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't even want to do
Sure.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, do you find that like when you make decisions right now, do you have to go through that decision making process?
Yeah.
You still find
Like
that?
what is it? Like, I learned to be para. Like slow is what is it? Slow is fast and fast is smooth.
Slow is smooth.
Slow is smooth. Yeah.
fast.
And it's just to take the time. It's and to
Yeah.
kind of like have that like situational awareness of where one is at, especially when one is hungry,
Yeah.
angry, lonely, and tired. In terms of like the sexual sins. Like I mean those when people are tired or
Yeah,
angry.
yeah.
I mean those senses get more heightened because we just need an outlet.
So like we talk about the resiliency techniques in the military.
Mhm.
So were you aware of these? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh
when I
yeah,
say the
like
resiliency
in terms of visualization, in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
deep breathing, in terms of like self-talk. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I found in basic training was we learned those and it's like, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your basic training experience, was it like well instructed to you guys about how to utilize it?
I mean, it was instructed now to the degree in which people accepted it. Like,
Oh, right.
yeah,
Okay, I
that's
get
always
you. I
the
got you.
the thing. And so, I mean, this is where because the pressure, like the expectations that people have, and especially someone's like, and I find even in the military, if someone's capable, like that person will have opportunities to be promoted, but with the promotion comes responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's easy then. I mean, even the CAF has its own significant scandals of people who've misused their responsibility, their privilege to harm others. And
Yeah.
so because like things got off kilter. As you mentioned, like, when things are chill, yeah, it's easy to make good decisions. But when one is tired or deployed or there's situations at home, it's like, whoa. And this is where I've always like we have what's called spiritual directors, like mentors, older, like we can go to and just talk. And I mean, this is what a chaplain is there for. Is also when people say, "Well, I'm off kilter," or a sentinel will say, "Hey, so and so, like, man, like you seem to be having some struggle. Let's go and get the chaplain involved." Like just to have a mentor, having a listening ear, like, and then because I find like. Most of my cases, in terms of dialogues with people, it's like people, like 80% of the situations I have, if people just are able to talk to someone who's non-judgmental, who just listens actively, the problem is resolved. It's like just sharing it, or it's like people think about the solution themselves. So when people kind of like have like I'm not feeling well, like I'm not stressed or what, I'm not making good decisions. Like if I don't get some help, like I'm going to hurt somebody or hurt. And I mean, within the priesthood or any position, even parents abusing their responsibilities as parents, harm their children. I mean, this is where for them to say, "Well, I need help." Like I wish my father with his drinking would have had help.
Can I ask you this? Like in terms of trying to keep the conversation focused on like how things are within our organization, how good are we as an organization? And you can be more specific in how you answer this, but how good are we as an organization at listening to our people?
I think there's been a sea change. I mean, some people will denigrate culture change in some ways, and rightly so. And some people would say, the awareness of mental health. Like I know with the with the number of COs, like they're readily they give compassionate leaves to members if there's a significant situation at home. Whereas maybe in the past, like, come on, grind it out. Like you're tough. Like you'll see your so-and-so at Christmas or, block leave. Why do you have to leave now? I think there's a greater awareness of people's needs.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point where we're always just going to be good at addressing people's needs? Or is there always going to be some sort of variable at play that's going to never make it fully
Yeah,
100%
I don't know. I
possible.
mean, this is where do some soldiers take advantage of these
Yeah.
offerings? Like, and this is judgment. I mean, there'll be some mistakes, but I think the sense of goodwill,
Yeah.
and I think if we look after our people, and I mean this for me, like the proactive approach is best. Like if there are like changes, there are little things that we can do that are not harmful to the position. Give the person a little of a break.
Yeah.
Because if they're happier, their output will improve, or like, because I mean, it's even in terms of retention. Like if we look after our people, we will retain our people.
Yeah, I think so. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah. So I think there's just a greater awareness, or of, I've had members say, listen, I've had, like, I got to go to the CDU, and it's like, man, they just talk to your change. Just let them know you need the help. So it's like, I mean, I use the analogy of professional wrestling. I love tag team wrestling from the 80s.
Hey.
And so, there's great wrestlers, whether their power or their finesse, like at some point they're in the ring too long and they got to tag out. But once they refresh, they tag in and go back to work. And so I think that awareness of seeking the good of the person, giving that benefit of the doubt. And if there are problems, then address the problems as they arise. So I think that there is a greater, tremendous awareness of mental health and giving people the capacity to address things, which is good.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Can I ask you, I don't know if this is like asking a similar question, but why do you think people are getting out of the military earlier than they would be normally?
I don't know. I think in some cases, I mean, this is my prejudice. I come from the civvy side, and I see all the opportunities. It's like, wow, I can do so many cool things.
Yeah.
I can travel. I can, serve in different units. I can jump out of airplanes. I can go on an Iron Warrior. Like, I mean, I say this because on civvy side, people pay for that kind of training. And this is, so I see that. Whereas, let's say someone who comes in out of high school thinks, doesn't see life on civvy side, doesn't appreciate that being able to go to the CDU and go to sick parade immediately on civvy side, especially if one's going to be in an isolated community, that those services aren't readily available. So in terms of why people leave, I mean, there are any number of reasons. Maybe people just get a better offer. Maybe people get really beat up, and 3RCF people get beat up by virtue of the work. At least, and I know one unit that I served at, whenever the CEO would say, whenever someone wants to VR, he says, before you go to the transition center, come and talk to me. I'm going to find out what's going on, like why you want to go, how could we have improved the situation? And sometimes having that dialogue with the boss kind of helps.
Mm-hmm.
Without, like people who've, very capable people who leave, and then, no one asks why, like what could we have helped the situation?
Yeah.
So
everyone has their reasons.
Absolutely.
And I think principally speaking, there's a few like maybe principal, like, I guess that's the way to put it. Like principal reasons why people leave. And I know something that's important to me is to feel like I'm valued, and how can we go about that? There's probably more than one way to go about demonstrating to your people, your subordinates, your community that you're working within, that they're valued.
Yeah.
And that also goes back to valuing yourself. But people feeling valued at work is a big deal. People feeling like what they're doing is significant. Now, that is something that's hard to control because we work in an organization that has so many layers of influence and control on the layers below it that we can't necessarily dictate or decide when we're going to be operational, when we're going to get to do certain courses or tasks, right? That's out of our control. But what is within our control is making people feel valued at work. And you don't necessarily have to put money into people. But it does require creativity. It does require being thoughtful, being compassionate, putting energy into your people.
Sure. And
that's something that I think about. And it's something that I think about when I reflect. Am I valuing my people? Because even now, even though I can get complimented on me getting tasks done and having some accolades along the way, it's like every now and then it's like, man, I have to be conscious of this so I don't get on my high horse and forget about valuing the people that I have below me. Because I know I've made decisions not based off financial incentive,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the unique and odd thing about this organization is like it's not the organization to necessarily be financially motivated to do certain things. I think a lot of it has to come down to your ability to empower your subordinates to want to do things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go too deep down like a rabbit hole of just like blah, 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 blah. Like, again, I just, have like my college education. So I'm not no real academic here or anything like that. But I do believe making people feel valued at work is a huge deal. And people will make significant commutes. They'll go out of their way. They'll spend extra time on stuff or for you because they believe in you. And showing compassion, showing that you're interested in their career, their development, or their problems is a huge deal. And I think that's why the chaplain's office is such an integral role to the battalion, is that you offer that capability for a battalion commander to sustain maintenance and morale of his unit, right? By having you as an asset there to help his members feel valued.
Yeah.
And it's important to see the Padre in the field when you're like waist deep in the shit, you know what I mean? Like we go down to like a JRTC, a Maple Resolve, or you name whatever it is. I think there's something special about having a chaplain on the line.
Sure.
That's amazing, Padre. Like, you've spent at least like an hour with us talking and discussing.
Yeah.
Is there anything on your mind that you'd like to talk about while you're with us?
Sure. I mean, just going back to morale in terms of like why people leave, and I think if people just if supervisors just listen to their members, I think one of the key things is people just are assuming too much responsibility at a rank that is above them, and they're not getting whether the accolade or the pay, or I mean more so just the support. And so I mean just being aware of that. And so when members, when let's say Master Corporal comes, he says, "Listen, man, like Sarge, I'm having a lot of problems because the workload." And so just being able to listen to people, I think is a big support to them. It's okay, I'm listening to you and I can help. And I mean, what a chaplain can do is advocate on the soldier's behalf, because we do provide a morale report, which ultimately goes up to the CDS. And so even on a unit level, like if we go up through our own chaplain chain, and eventually the chaplain chain offers a report to the CDS, and it filters down. A lot of it comes to members saying, "Listen, I'm overworked because we don't have enough people," and yet the demands for IRUs, DOM ops, it's so great. And even next year for like here in Petawawa, like so many members are going to be out the door on to Latvia. Who's home? 3 RCR. And it's more work. And so therefore, like just to kind of being able to like, and this is like perfect, to be, wisdom. I mean, in terms of like how much to push people and how much to kind of give leeway. It's a healthy tension. And so the bottom line, just listening to people and advocating for them and say, if someone comes to you, Sarge, and then they kind of go back, well, okay, here's the problem. What are some COAs? Let's talk about some alternatives. How can we address the issue? And that goes a long way. You mentioned about meaningful work, is that people can say, I'm contributing, because even though I'm knee deep in the muck, like my supervisor's listening to me and listening and providing and listening to some of my COAs, and so I think we can work this out, because I think people love being in the CAF. Like, I mean, in terms of, we were talking earlier about, value, what is good? Well, for the CAF, like wearing the green implies like we're viewed at a higher, they're much more expected of a CAF soldier than non-CAF soldier. And even with the ethics and values that the CAF has, that's what it equates to being good. And so how do we enable people to be good is, at least to listen to people and say, okay, what are the alternatives? Okay, things are bad. How can we address them? So just listen to people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great advice, for people listening out there and thinking about, how do I improve myself? How do I improve myself as a follower, as a leader, as someone who wants to be a leader?
Sure. And, Sergeant, pardon me. Like, I mean, even within the chaplaincy, like we're told by our supervisors is that we are our own career manager. So we have to take the initiative on things. And so therefore, like from my perspective, there's so many options that people can take. Like for me, one of my goals is to learn French. And I mean, there are ways to learn French, but that right now, I mean, there's so many cutbacks. It's like, I can't take the course that would fit within the frame of what I can, in terms of my work schedule. So I mean, there's so many opportunities for people to improve themselves, and therefore then it just benefits. It's like a momentum building activity, but people have to take the initiative.
Mm-hmm. And I think perspective plays a lot into it too, right? The idea of being grateful, and taking the time to appreciate your situation and what you have versus what you don't have. And, say what you want. It's one of those things where I find over time, you have to come back at it and take a look at yourself. Like, are you not appreciating how good you have it? Because sometimes that helps a lot, is to reanalyze yourself. And what do I mean by this? I mean, like, after being in the military for myself 15, 16 years, sometimes I can get resentful and I can get upset about things even now, even though I would argue that I still have a lot of love and appreciation for this organization. It's contributed a lot to my own personal and professional development. But there are times where it's a double-edged blade, my passion for this organization, because I can really hate it too.
Sure.
And you catch me in the lines, you'll hear my unfiltered perspective on automatic rapid fire sometimes, But with that being said, I do want to say that every now and then I'm fortunate enough to have these experiences, whether it's me engaging with somebody or me doing something that makes me think about myself and how much I appreciate sometimes my circumstances. Like, I work in an organization where athleticism. Oh my God. How do you help me out here? Athleticism. There you go.
Okay.
All right, folks. I'm not even gonna try to say that again right now. But when you consider that, the health and wellness that's involved with our organization, the opportunities to try new things, and the amount of almost, it feels like infinite opportunities to try new things, right? That is a big part of discovering more about yourself, right? Trying new things.
Sure.
And the health aspect of it has put me, I would say, in a position where I'm ahead of a lot of my peers that are not in the military. And then on top of that, I do make a modest living. Right. And I think everybody in the military makes a modest living, especially if we're just relatively okay at making financial decisions. So there's a lot to be grateful for. But then there's the interesting thing about the people that I've gotten to meet in this organization, which have been a rich resource of knowledge and networking and just like learning for myself. Like, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for all these cool people that I wouldn't have met, people who grew up in corners of the country that I would have realistically never have spent time over there, and to get their perspective and hear their attitude towards things, and especially the why. Why do you think that way? Why do you believe that way? Because, this person's had experiences that I never had.
Sure.
And where I work, I have people that I work with that have experienced war, that have experienced growing up in dynamics where I never had to. So in single parent households, foster care households, people who grew up religious, people who didn't grow up religious, with a lot of money, no money, working up growing up as a single parent or whatever. So all these variety of different lifestyle choices. And it's interesting. Like, I've learned a lot about the world and what I want to do in it. It started off with this idea of trying to help people and trying to find something meaningful to do, like go serve overseas. And now it's become something much more deeper from that, But perspective, it's the chaplains, it's my colleagues in the building, it's the guys who I see doing PT in the morning, or the guys staying after work to go do PT, that makes me reevaluate, am I doing things to the best of my abilities? So I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah.
But I digress here. So Padre, I do want to bring it back to you here. Are there any memorable kind of quotes or references from the Bible that you think about often or that come to mind?
Sure. I think about several, like, where your treasure is, your heart will be also.
Tell me about that.
What we value is really at the core of what's important. So if it's, what we value is what we get drawn to, love one another as I have loved you. To turn the other cheek. I mean, these are like such vivid examples of where we focus our lives on.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that comes to mind? Is there
there's another one. Jesus, from a Catholic perspective, Jesus was born from a virgin. This is where
let's talk about this.
What in the world? And so even like when this angel Gabriel goes to Mary and says, how can this be that I will be the mother of God? Like, how can God become human? How can I, as a virgin, bear a child? And I mean, that phrase, like, how can this be? And so the utter mystery of life. And I mean, the great characters of the New Testament, like, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Judas betrays Jesus. St. Paul is this great persecutor of the faith, becomes his greatest promoter. Like Mary Magdalene has 7 demons coming out of her, and she's the first one to say that this Jesus rose from the dead. My point is that life is crazy. Like, life is mysterious, and to have hope. And I think this is where maybe our age lacks that. Is this perspective, especially when people see the curated images on TikTok or Instagram, and then people get so deflated, say, I can't look like that. I can't be as successful as that. And, the scriptures speak about, how, out of chaos can come a new creation. And like I said about these, great characters of the New Testament, that somehow that they were messed up, and somehow that even in being messed up, that provided the avenue for something great to happen. And we mentioned about perspective, and you mentioned about some of the people you kind of find support in, like even among chaplains. Like, how in the world can 15 chaplains here in Petawawa work with each other? Because we come from such different perspectives. You mentioned about where people had grown up. Like, that's exactly in our community among the chaplains. Like, we come from very volatile denominations who've separated from one another. And how can we all work together? Like, it's marvelous how the chaplaincies work, because our main initiative is to look after the needs of our members, and to take our experiences in charity and grace to say, okay, let's focus on what's common to our work, so that we can serve our members well. So, I mean, in terms of the surprises of the CAF, the mystery is like, how can this be? Well, chaplaincy works in a remarkable way.
It does.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm very, very happy and fortunate to have had positive experiences. And I do think if you do need the services out there, you should go knock on your battalion, your unit chaplain's door, regardless of their denomination, because I don't think that has as much at play than it does of them being available to talk to you.
You know what I mean? I would say 98% of my interactions is not religiously affiliated. It's like, Padre needs someone to talk to. Hey, Padre, I'm having financial difficulty. Padre, I have mental health issues. Padre, and so we're like a first responder. Like, again, that sense of capacity, being able to advocate for the members, having that time and space to do so is a real privilege. Getting back to what does a chaplain do? If a chaplain really cares, like, it's like another way to express is like helping our members stay at their best in the worst situations. This is our job. And so, not everyone is called to become a chaplain. For me, it's a gift in terms of, you said, in terms of, you see my life as one of service. That's exactly it. That's, it's far better to give than to receive.
Well said, Padre.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here, to join us, share a bit about yourself, your perspective, your kind of attitude towards what you do. You are a vital part of the battalion, and you and your occupation play a vital service to the military and for all the members that work in uniform at home and abroad overseas. Again, for anybody listening out there, if you ever feel like you need the services of the chaplain's office, go and use it. You guys offer sentinel training, and it happens periodically at every unit, it sounds like, in every formation. So just either ask your chain of command or go to the chaplain's office yourself and you can find out more about when the next time they'll run Sentinel training. So you can be qualified to be a peer support member of your unit. Padre, do you have any final words before we shut this down?
No, for me, my Lou Gehrig, like he's my favorite. I love the New York Yankees, and so when he died of ALS, so the disease was named after him, and so on the day July 4th, 1939, when he was has Lou Gehrig's Day in Yankee Stadium, and people were expecting him, to sob and wail about his lost life. He's no longer playing baseball. I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth in terms of all that's happened to me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to be able to serve at 3 RCR, to be a chaplain, like I'm so lucky. So I just want to kind of share my gratitude, and hopefully it gives people a sense of hope that the chaplain is there to offer hope and perspective, and hopefully to help. Yep.
Right on.
Okay.
Well said, Padre. Thank you again for your time today and sharing your story. I hope that we can sit down again in the future and maybe discuss more about things that are important, things that are important to you. And anything we can say and talk about to support the unit. Once again, everybody, I'm Manny Singh from 3RCR, the host of the RCR Association podcast. And stay tuned for future content from Olympian Bear that we'll be producing later this week as well. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Pro Patria. Right on, Padre.
Sorry,
Thank you
so much.
so much.